Hello, it's Bo Kemp inviting you to the Achieve Summit 2026, Chicagoland's #1 business, entrepreneur, and real estate event. It's all happening June 4th through 6th at Wind Creek Casino and Hotel. Join this 3-day immersive event that will transform you from operator to owner. Whether you're looking to acquire a profitable business, develop a high-value real estate project, or scale an existing business, the Achieve Summit provides the live marketplace and technical tools to make it happen. And this year's keynote speaker is business leader and philanthropist Marcus Lemonis. More information and to secure your tickets or sponsorship, visit at southlanddevelopment.org. See you there. Today on The First Million is always the hardest. I'm joined by Catherine Okoroh of Advanced Lending for a conversation about one of the most powerful paths to ownership, real estate investing. Catherine helps break down the barriers that stop so many people from getting ahead: fear, credit questions, down payments, and confusion around financing. This episode is about practical solutions, smart lending, and turning the dream of real estate ownership into a real plan. Welcome. Yeah. And for everyone who's watching and listening, tell us your name and tell us your business.
Okay, my name is Catherine Okoroh, which you already know that. Yes. And my business, well, I'm a residential and commercial lender. I'm a broker, non-deal correspondent lender.
And what's the name of the company?
Advanced Lending Professionals.
So Advanced Lending Professionals, and tell us a little bit about what the focus of Advanced Lending Professionals is.
Well, I would say our focus is twofold. We work with residential folks that want to buy residential properties. So your first-time home buyer, your move-up, move-out buyer, condos, single families, 1 to 4 units. And then we turn our hats around and we work with first-time investors. We work with seasoned investors. We work with those that want to do fix and flips or purchase their, a 10 unit, do a DSCR loan. You probably heard that before.
Yeah, and for everybody, to describe what a DSCR loan is.
Oh, it's a beautiful loan. It's debt service coverage ratio. And it basically means that if the rents cover the mortgage payment, you don't need any other income. That income suffices, and now you can purchase that property with the income from the property alone. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
So I want to get into a little bit of the story of how you started the business.
Oh, okay.
But before I do that, one, I want to say thank you for your sponsorship of the Achieve Summit.
Absolutely.
That is coming up June 4th and 6th at Wind Creek Casino. We're excited, and it's an opportunity for us to go into a deeper dive of exactly what it is that you do and how you can help people. But I also want you to tell the story of your experience in real estate and how you got to the point where you decided, I'm going to go and start Advance.
Okay. So we started with our first house, and we were looking for this house, and we didn't know it then, but it was in the best neighborhood. Yeah. It was a great neighborhood, but the house only had 2 bedrooms. The basement was unfinished, had no garage. And even the bedroom, the master or the primary bedroom was unfinished. Mm. And to most people, that probably that's not big enough for me.
Right.
But what we saw, my husband and I, was, the basement's not finished, but we can add an office down there. Maybe we can add a bedroom down there. We could finish the basement. We could build a garage. And we started doing the math. If you add a bathroom, if you finish a basement, if you add a bedroom, if you add a garage, this adds value. And our formula worked. I had been a loan officer for about a year when we bought our first house. Okay. And my husband also got his real estate license, just to kind of help us kind of navigate what we were seeing. And I learned a lot from just seeing, appraisals and, okay, well, that house isn't updated, but this one is, and the value has changed. Mm. So we took that same formula, bought our first house, did all these improvements, and our value doubled. Wow. When our value doubled, we got lines of credit, and we purchased a condo and I think 3 or 4 other properties just with the equity from that one house. Our story started really was our first home. And if I can just say this, please. A lot of people who want to invest, they're like, some people don't even own their own home yet, and they want to buy an investment property. And I'm like, yeah, but if you buy your own home, you got 3% down, maybe 5%. You get to get in with a lower entry point, lower down payment. And it could really change your life if you buy right. And I try to teach people how to buy right.
So it's interesting because there's a lot of information out now that debates whether or not you in fact should treat your home as an investment versus your home. And just what's your thought about that?
I think absolutely. Every home, well, I think the big thing is there's a lot of emotions in real estate, right? People love it. They start decorating it before they own it. The reality is, I want my sofa go here, I want this. And I'm like, don't get caught up in that because you may lose the investment. You may find yourself like, I've got this beautiful home, but I don't have a lot of equity in it. And that equity is that piece that really changes lives. It is an investment. I'm trying to think how many homes we've owned now as our primaries. I think we've had 3 or 4.
Okay.
And the reality is most people will own at least 3 to 5 primary homes in their lifetime. Yeah. People move. Yeah. Some people, I'm moving one time. Well, now you got kids that need to be, okay, now you move again. Well, I think I want to be in the city, I'm in the suburbs. Then you move again. Then you say, I think I want to go back to the city. And then and it's going to change. So you're going to enjoy it while you have it, but really look at the investment of it. Don't customize a house so to your liking that nobody else likes this house and you can't sell it, and then you get to the place where you're like, you know what, this is the forever home. Maybe that's I'm going to retire and this is, the kids, this is the house right here. I would say not get emotional about it. And every house is an investment.
So it's interesting, there's this theory that people talk about, and I've seen it myself, that the wealthiest among us, often live in a place that they don't own. They own real estate, but it's not necessarily where they live. And so I'm curious just to dig a little deeper about the thought process of, so I hear 2 things. One, using your primary residence as an investment is a way to jumpstart the process.
That's right.
Because there are all these advantages that you get as a primary homeowner, and particularly as a first-time homeowner, that you can take advantage of in this project. But if you're going to do that, you can't be emotionally tied to that property because the whole point of that property is eventually to sell it.
That's right. To sell it or rent it out.
Or rent it out. Yeah. But now, as you become more mature in your real estate process, how does that change, or does it change, whether or not your primary residence should be something that you own or rent?
I think it depends on your strategy and what your goals are. Yeah. My husband and I in particular, I think because of what I do, I've learned not to be very emotional. Yeah. I was very emotional when I bought my first home. I cried at my closing. Yeah. That's how emotional I was. Yeah. It eventually changed, and we started seeing what this house could do for us. We went in thinking that, but I have to admit, I was completely emotional. I was a blubbering, I closed on my house. Oh my gosh, I was so excited, namely because I was turned down when I tried to buy my first house.
Is that right?
I was turned down. I did everything right? You go to college, you graduate, you get a good job, all this. That was what I grew up with hearing. Yeah. And to get turned down for a loan, I was like, but why? The job, I don't understand. I didn't know anything about credit. My credit wasn't great. And I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know what to do. And I honestly couldn't find a lot of help, which actually led me to even changing my career. I used to be a recruiter. When I got turned down, it consumed me. I was just like, oh my gosh.
It felt personal.
Oh my gosh. It was extremely personal. I cried. And I tell people I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like a failure. I don't know if people can relate to that, but when you feel like you've done everything right, and then somebody says no, and then nobody explains why, you do feel like you're a failure.
Well, they laid out a path, and you said, okay, I will adhere to the path that you've given me. Yeah. But now you, at the end of the game, say, nope, you can't win no matter what.
But I don't understand, though, because I checked all the boxes, right? And then they said no. So I started researching, and I learned about the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And when I tell you that I dissected that document like nobody's business, and I was looking at my own credit, and I figured it all out, and I was like, it's working. This is working. I'm seeing things removed from my credit report. I'm managing my debt better. I'm paying off debt. I'm doing these. My scores are going up. It's working. So a year after I got denied, actually not a year, 4 years after I got denied, I eventually wound up buying my house. And at that point, I had become a loan officer. And a year after being a loan officer, bought my first house. Yeah.
So that you were so upset by not actually achieving that goal.
It changed my
whole
whole
life.
life.
I'm going to be a person who makes a decision.
And can I tell you, Bo, it changed my entire life. That's why I always say, there's this proverb, I don't know who said it, right? Yeah, right. But when something happens, don't say this is bad or even that it's good. You don't know. And as long as you think that way and you keep going, so many things are going to open up that you never would have even considered. I in a million, I would have never said, I want to be a loan officer. I want to help people. Because I had no exposure to it. I didn't hear about it in college. It happened because of a downturn in my life. I was denied, and then it changed the way I thought about everything.
Well, it's an amazing story to go from I'm trying to do the right thing, I get denied, to turning around. And now, not only did you buy a property, but now what you figured out is that I can actually help other people buy
That's
properties.
right. I became what I did not see.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's actually why I started, why I decided to become a loan officer, is I said, I want to be what I don't see. And I said, I wonder if there's anybody else out there like me, I remember praying even because when and don't worry, I'm not getting emotional now, but I'm incredibly grateful that I thought the way I did, that I didn't take no for an answer, and that it put me on this path to keep looking.
It was motivation as opposed to a setback.
Yes, it was a setup, not a setback. Yep, and it set me up, and it really has changed my life. I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, look at where we are. It's all because of real estate. It's all because of real estate. And we've taken some calculated risks and we've taken some not so calculated risks. We've won some, we've lost. The downturn was tough. We rebuilt and reestablished. But I said it's because of the knowledge we gained and because of the mistakes we made and because of kind of keep going back in. We tend to be more conservative. We're looking at the numbers, which is what I do every day in my job. I'm looking at the numbers. I help people figure out what they want to do, and then I connect them with lenders to figure out how to do it.
It's interesting. It would not have been abnormal or uncalled for you to just be fearful of going back into that process. And one of the things I talk about in the podcast a lot is the difference between fear and danger. And a lot of people conflate these two things. They confuse them to be one and the same. They think just because they're fearful of something that it's also dangerous. But those two things are often separate, right? A burning house is objectively dangerous, but firemen walk into burning houses all the time. Right? Because they overcome that fear. It would not be, unreasonable for you to have said, I failed at this first attempt and I'm fearful about taking the next step to do it again. But you actually went to another level and said, I'm going to become that thing I don't see.
That's right.
And I just think that's amazing. And you also mentioned another thing that's a concept that we talk about, which is reckless versus calculated risk. A lot of people, once they've overcome the fear of taking the risk, their next problem is figuring out, well, what's calculated and what's reckless. You mentioned a little bit how you started to kind of expand your risk profile. And how do you manage the difference between what's reckless and what's calculated?
We always go back to what we've experienced or what we've seen. We learn from other people's mistakes. That's hopefully
instead of your own, right?
Yeah, exactly. But something I was going to tell you is that, I talk to a lot of people every week, all day. I talk to the first-time home buyer, to the seasoned investor, even the new investor. There's a lot of fear out there, and there are a lot of people whose fear has really crippled them. I have several examples of people that I've worked with now, probably for at least, I would say, 3 to 4 years, that have not purchased a home for fear. What if I don't have enough money? What if something goes wrong with the place? Well, something is going to go wrong with it because it's a house, right? Or it's a building or 2-flat or 3-flat, whatever it is. I have a lady right now, and she finally said, "No, I'm ready." I started talking to her 2 years ago. She applied, we got her pre-approved, and she started looking at everything. Also, her expectations were, she didn't really know. So I would tell everybody, get out there and just start looking at properties. Get pre-approved, just start looking at properties. Let your agent know, maybe I'm not ready now or whatever the case may be. But her fear crippled her so much that she literally went from, maybe she could get a nice turnkey property that needed a little bit of work for maybe $400,000 till now it's $700,000. So she missed that window. And now what she's seeing looks worse than what she saw before. And she's like, oh my gosh, I missed the window. I said, but don't miss the next one. Right? So that fear, so learn from that was 2 years that went by that the whole market changed. So that fear can be really dangerous too.
I think, a really important point there is you're always going to have some level of fear. But you have to recognize
do it afraid.
That's an emotion. And I do believe this concept of be afraid and do it anyway. But that's too simplistic. And truthfully, I think what you really are asking people to do is to say, don't let your fear stop you from actually taking a calculated risk. And for a lot of folks, they struggle with what that calculated risk actually looks like, largely because they have a fear, not even of losing money. They have a fear of failure. They have a fear that someone's going to say, you know what? See, I told you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then you prove those naysayers wrong.
Yeah.
So part of it is getting people to a place to be comfortable with it's not going to be perfect, right? It's not going to all work out all the time.
Yeah.
You might even have instances where you make an investment in real estate and you don't make that much money or any money at all. But that's not a reason to not continue to look for those opportunities and to take a calculated risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I was going to say, there's a lady I was talking to recently, and one of the things I told her was determine what you can take and what's like a take it or leave it. And I said, this is the person I'm talking about. I said, is it money you're afraid of losing? She's like, well, no, I know I got to invest. Okay, so we know it's not the money, right? I said, is it, she has a daughter. I said, are you afraid your daughter's going to, no, my daughter's going to live with me. So, no, okay, so that's not it. I said, is it that something's going to break, you're not going to know how to fix it, or you're not going to well, no, that's not it either. I said, well, what is it? And she was like, I don't know. I think I'm just afraid of fear. I'm just afraid. And I even tell my kids, I'm like, if you can't put a finger on it, then it has no weight, so you got to move on. And she's like, you know what, you're right. She's like, I have an imaginary fear. I can't put my finger on what it is.
Yeah.
I'm just afraid of the process.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of the process. That's it, right? Yeah. I'm like, what are you afraid of with the process? Well, that I won't understand it. I was like, we're going to walk you every step of the way. You just have to make the decisions. You want this building or whatever, we're going to help you get through there. Now what? And she's like, I've taken away all the excuses. So now she's like, she's proceeding. She's going to get her place.
Well, you made this point about becoming the thing you didn't see. For a lot of people, they struggle to see themselves as real estate investors.
Yeah.
So they in their mind, they can conceive of that, but in their heart, they don't feel it, right? And because of that, it's like an imposter syndrome. It's like, I'm out here and I'm cosplaying like I'm going to be a real estate investor, as opposed to them owning and saying, no, I'm going to do this. And that's understandable.
Yeah.
So finding a path and giving yourself a direction to move so that you are consistently doing work over a period of time, that it moves from kind of being cosplay to being actually something that you really do, is a really important component sometimes for people crossing that hurdle and not feeling like they're imposters. Once you buy your first property, and you exit your first property, then you really feel like, no, I'm a real investor now. So, you went through that process.
Absolutely.
And it took you from that to all of a sudden deciding, I'm going to start advanced lending.
Yeah.
Like, tell us the story about why you decided to move in the direction where I'm going to have my own business where I'm doing this work.
Well, I felt like I was a little in a box. And then also, I really love what I do.
Yeah.
And
you can feel that.
Yeah. And I was getting a little bored.
Yeah.
So actually it was my husband, because he said, don't you think it's about time that you kind of branched out? And I was like, I guess so. Yeah. There was fear on my part, though. I'll be honest.
How could there not be?
I was always used to working under, like, I work for big companies, or, they have this name. And so, but then I had to realize that, no, I have a name.
Yeah.
No, I have a name, and I've worked hard to have integrity and to know my craft, and I really enjoy people.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to help people. Now, people help people in different ways. I've actually helped people become millionaires. I've helped people invest in real estate. I've helped them change. Oh, it feels amazing, because I always tell people, one, I can sleep at night, and two, I don't mind seeing somebody that I work with in a grocery store.
Yeah.
And the reason why that matters is because when you do things like that impact people's lives, there's shame. I don't have any shame. I've helped a lot of people. Yeah. So I've been in the industry now for over 20 years, and I still get referrals from people that I haven't done a loan for in years, but they're sending me their kids and they're sending me their family members. That means a lot when somebody entrusts you with their family and their kids, and they're like, this is the only person I want you to talk to. That means so much to me. And I'm thinking, like, I thank God, because I'm like, I became what I did not see. I actually speak at schools. I went to a school the other week, and it was so cool. The kids were asking me a lot of questions and stuff, and all I could see was myself in them. And I'm like, man, if somebody like me came to my school, I wonder if I would have been a loan officer sooner. I wonder if I would have been in this industry sooner, because I would have seen myself. And I'm actually going to another school, and I take every opportunity to tell people what I do, because it is really unfounded. There are not a lot of Black women in finance on this side of things. But I enjoy it. I lend across the U.S.
So you're in all 50 states.
Yep. Well, I'm not licensed in all 50 states. I'm licensed in Georgia, Texas, Indiana, Maryland, so I have about 7 state licenses, but I have loan officers that are licensed across the U.S. And so we collaborate and work together, and we're able to service all 50 states with all the products. And the most fulfilling thing, and the thing that takes away the fear, is when you feel like you're walking in your purpose. When you're walking in a thing that really not only just changes your life, but changes the lives of others. I think that's the most impacting thing for me, is that I can point to people that I've helped. There's a satisfaction in knowing that even if, I'm not the loan officer, and I tell people that, I'm like, even if I'm not the one, please tell me what you want to do. And then I'll point, maybe it's a credit union, or maybe it's a private bank, or maybe it's a regional bank, or maybe it's a whatever. So I try my best to direct people, even if I'm not the source.
And sometimes I'm sure you have to go through a process of educating them about how to manage their credit, educating them about how they create their deal team, educating them about like how do they create a pipeline of product. All of those are elements that are necessary for people to be successful.
Yes, and I have a recent example of someone who was selling their place, and they went with a discount broker. And it was a horrific process. It was a lag in communication. The seller didn't know what was going on. The buyers, which means the buyers, also only knew from their side. There was a lot of missteps. There wasn't a lot of direction given. Our process was lagged. We wound up having to get an extension because they didn't want to pay. And, while I do believe people need to be competitive, I think you have to understand what you're getting and what you're not getting when you don't work with a professional, someone who has experience. But the most important thing, they have to have your best interest at heart. And so even if somebody's the cheapest, it doesn't always make them the best. And somebody's the most expensive, it also doesn't make them the best. I think people, if I were giving advice to investors, to homebuyers, to anybody, is you've got to find your team, but you also have to find your match, personality match, energy match. You can check licenses, you can check reviews. Reviews are big, especially if people are honest. I always say if people give reviews, they should be honest. Really try to match. See if you match the person's energy. Are you comfortable with the way they speak and how they explain things to you? Thank goodness, I've actually been referred people who they were like, I feel like I'm talking to my sister or my cousin, and I'm like, okay, somebody that I know, because I am very interested in people. I am very interested in what they want to accomplish. So that I can help them do that. It's just very fulfilling to know that I'm not only helping myself. I tell this story about a lady I met when I first became a loan officer. She bought her first property when she was 19 years old. And I was like, how did you do that? She said, well, all my little odd jobs. She worked at the grocery store and then this. And it added up till it was stable. And then she bought a building. It was like $80,000. You can't buy a building. I mean, you good. It's falling apart, right? And it wasn't in great shape. But that started her whole thing. And by the time she was like 40, I mean, she was a millionaire many times over. I was like, man, what was I doing at 19? Like, I was not thinking about buying real estate. So that's why I go to high schools. Because there are kids that know exactly what they want to do. They've been, I have a friend, she actually did my hair. She was a pharmacy tech for years. And now she's going to pharmacy school.
Right.
She could actually she could be one of those. She's ready. Yeah, because she's been a pharmacy tech since she was in high school, which means that adds up to experience. And then she gets her degree. Like one day out of college, you can buy your first property. And she said, Miss Cat, she calls me Miss Cat. Miss Cat, when I buy my place, I said, I'm so glad. I wish somebody was talking to me about that when I was 17.
Do you get that knot in your stomach every Sunday night? You've checked all the boxes,
career, title, income. But if you're honest, this is not the life you imagined. What if the problem isn't you? It's the design of your life. I'm Bo. I help high performers redesign their lives for freedom, purpose, and real wealth. Join my masterclass and I'll walk you through the exact framework. Go to lifedesign.com. That's LIFEDESYN.com. Your new chapter doesn't start someday, it starts now.
You're listening to The First Million is Always the Hardest. We are now returning to the show.
You have become an entrepreneur. And I think sometimes when people get into real estate, they forget that being a real estate developer is also an entrepreneurial position.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk a little bit about how you translated your experience as your early entrepreneurship into advanced lending, because that's also an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah. I was getting a lot of phone calls, and my loan products were in a box, and I needed a bigger box. So I actually use a lending platform called Nexa Mortgage, which is a very large brokerage. But I use this lending platform because I have access to over 280 lenders that all specialize in certain things. You know, there are lenders that specialize in farms, in SBA loans, in commercial property, in ground-up construction, with investors, et cetera. And I was getting those calls, and I didn't have the lenders to work with. But I also wanted to expand my horizons and do something a little different. So again, like what I mentioned, my husband was like, "Don't you think it's time?" And I thought, "Yeah, I think it's time." And then I took the leap.
Yeah.
But when I tell you, it was the best decision. I was nervous. I was like, I don't think people are going to know. And I would say within 6 months of starting Advanced Lending Professionals, everybody knew. Everybody knew. I've had people saying, I've seen you in the industry for years. Now I can actually work with you. Because they were developers and builders, and they were building all kinds of projects. They were doing fix and flips and fixing holes and stuff. And they said, I've seen you. Okay, that's good. Let's talk. And so now I'm learning a lot. I'm helping a lot, and I'm enjoying another side of the business. So I honestly, I've been told, you should get into commercial years ago, and I was scared.
Yeah.
I was scared, but it was the perfect time to do it. And business has been very steady and growing, and it's exciting, and which is why I'm so excited about the summit. I'm like a room full of real estate investors, business owners, entrepreneurs. Like, those are my people, you know. And I'm looking forward to that, because I'm looking forward to the conversations. I'm talking to people that want to buy car washes, franchises. They want to start accounting services. They want to open up podcasting spaces. And I'm so for it. I'm so in for it.
No, you're going to be in a perfect spot. And we're really excited about your role in working with us.
Absolutely.
And hopefully folks that are listening to this, which will come out soon, will be able to come and meet you in person. On top of that.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I want to transition a little bit, because the intent behind the Achieve Summit is to bring a room full of people that are looking to do transactions. And some of them are aspiring, meaning they're learning. Others have been doing this for a little while. Some of them are big, some of them are small. But one of the things in particular that will be important is for people to better understand kind of differentiated products that you have. So I wanted to give you a second to talk a little bit about the types of products that you are using to help people in their process of becoming developers.
Okay. So one is, I always ask them, tell me about your team. Do you have you done this work before? Like, there are a lot of people who were the fix and flippers, and now they want to be developers. Well, fix and flip is not the same as like ground up construction. It's very different. So they usually are forming JVs and partnerships with folks that have the experience. But I always say, really what lenders are looking for is that you've done 3. Okay, so I say, you develop a 3 is the magic number,
and you can get there whether it's you directly or you and your partner.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah, and it depends on percentage of ownership, and also credit standing, and assets. If it's, let's say, for example, it's a person who's like, they've done 5 or 10 fix and flips, and they're like, but there's a lot of land I want to build. Then I tell that person, then maybe who's that contractor that's been doing your flips with you?
Right.
Have they built before? Yeah, they built this and that. Okay, you might want to talk to them about being a partner. It's equity and stuff, and you've got to have those conversations. You definitely want to have a lawyer. to talk over, percentage of ownership, what that looks like in terms of a tax basis. Not everybody's going to have the same tax basis.
Right.
So should you have 10%? If you own more than 25% of a company, now it matters here. But if you own less, that's strategy, right?
So just to jump in real quick on this point, because I want to dive a little deeper because I think it could be practical and interesting. So if I have some capital, but I don't have experience, let's say, in building ground up.
Yeah.
The best thing for me to do is to find a partner.
Yeah.
But is it better for that partner maybe to have greater than 50% and me to have a minority share because that person has the experience?
Yeah, definitely. And also it depends on credit position. Like I have some developers where the person who has all the experience has the worst credit.
Right.
And the person who has the least, has the
So you may flip the ownership as
That's
a result,
right.
but it's important to note that ownership doesn't necessarily dictate economics.
That's right.
Right? So
Right.
somebody might be the majority owner, but the economics might still be in the favor of the other person.
That's right.
Because whatever their experience set is,
Yep.
or whatever the issues may be.
And they can work out those things. The operating agreement, all those things are laid out, which is why you need to have an attorney and you need to have a tax professional to do all of that.
Now, just on the tax professional side, one of the things that we are going to talk about at the summit is the difference between an accountant, a tax preparer, and a tax strategist. I'm curious, in the experience that you've had, how often do people come to the table really having a tax strategy versus simply, I'm trying to choose between an S Corp and I'm trying to choose between a C Corp? Because I think a lot of people really don't understand the difference between those three roles of being a tax preparer, someone who actually files your taxes, the accountant who actually accounts for how you're spending your money, and the tax strategist who's talking about what the structure should be that optimizes or reduces your tax liability.
Well, for example, a lot of the newer developers, they tend to have tax preparers. And I'm usually saying you need somebody to help you figure out what you need to do and how you need to set this up so that you don't sabotage yourself financially. The ones that are more experienced, they definitely have a tax strategist. And the ones that want to get into it, I got to say this too.
Yeah.
They don't want to pay. They don't want to pay for professionalism and they don't want to pay for service. They want to go the cheap route. They go to ChatGPT or they're using Claude or Gemini or something.
You get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for. And then when you find things like that, AI is real, big. And so I get questions sometimes. People will ask a question to AI or ChatGPT or whatever it is, and they'll just send me that. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
You put in, because they don't know. You got to go to a real person. And you got to tell them what you want to do and trust the expertise of that person. And you're probably going to have to pay for services.
And their experience.
And their experience, absolutely.
That's what you're really paying for.
Yeah, you're paying for them to say, okay, no, you want to form an LLC, you want to do a limited, or you want to do a JV with this percentage or whatever. And honestly, you should have the tax strategist, the lender, your real estate agent, all should have a call with each other so that everybody's on the same page. Very few people do that. But all of them should be talking to each other, including the attorney as well.
So they understand what you actually are trying to do.
Exactly. And I know we're talking about investors, but anybody buying, whether it's an investor, first-time home buyer, whatever.
Contractors too.
And the contract. Yes, absolutely. It's important that you talk to a tax preparer, not tax preparer. You talk to a tax strategist first, especially if you're self-employed.
Yeah.
If you're self-employed and you tell your accountant, I don't want to pay any taxes, or I want to pay as little as possible. Well, you're going to get a real big refund, aren't you? But guess what? You also are going to have an income when it tries to qualify for that particular loan that you're looking for.
Or the next one.
Or the next one, exactly. Which is good to also know that's when it's important to know the lending products. Hey, are they going to look at my tax returns, or is that not something that's necessary? That's actually a great question to ask.
So your debt service coverage ratio is a perfect example of where I can buy a property, and as long as I can indicate and give someone comfort that the people who are going to rent this property from me can pay for this, I qualify.
Yep.
So maybe talk a little bit about some of
that?
those.
Okay.
Well, it could be that and others. Just I think the hope is that we're going to help people who are aspiring to be developers understand the types and the ranges of products that they might want to use and how I graduate from one to the next.
Okay. So first of all, they have to know that if they're purchasing anything that's like a 2 to say 10 unit. Let's just use that as that's why I recommend the newer ones start. Absolutely. Is The building needs to be at least 70% leased.
Already.
Already.
So before you buy it, it needs to be 70% leased.
Yes.
And if it's at 70% when you buy it, but there are people that you need to get rid of and it drops down to 50%, is that okay?
No, that's a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if they drop off after you own it and you've already acquired it, no, I mean, the problem is you're not going to have as much rent, but you would have already gotten the loan.
Yeah.
So now you're responsible for making sure you pay that. It's okay if the leases have expired because in Cook County in particular, it's month to month. So it's good to know the laws of the state and what happens if you have an expired lease, basically.
Gotcha.
Most people aren't doing new leases every 12 months. They just, okay, well, you were in a lease and you're still there, so it's month to month. That's the understanding. As long as it's 70% leased, and then we usually want 2 to 3 months proof that the current owner has received the rents. Yep. Because not everything is just on paper. We want to see that, okay, that $10,000 every month has been going, okay, and the seller has to provide that information.
And how, for example, if you have someone who's been paying cash, how do you do that?
They should not be paying cash. There's no way to trace it.
You couldn't even just do like a bill, a note, anything?
You can get receipts from, an office store.
Yeah.
It has to be verifiable deposits, which that's a big thing about lending. Everything needs to be able to be verified. You cannot verify cash. And the question is, why are they paying you in cash? Yeah. So, I mean, if it's money orders or cashier's checks, that's different. Cash? No. Is it Zelle? No. Is it, Cash App or whatever?
Zelle doesn't count?
Zelle counts.
Okay.
Zelle counts, Cash App counts, because it's verifiable.
Yeah.
Cash, you can't. I'll tell you a funny story. My husband's like, never give you cash because I could have $100 in my pocket. It's gone in a day. He'll be like, what'd you buy? I'll be like, I have no idea. Yeah. It's gone. That's cash.
Well, so now that we've gotten, I interrupted you because I wanted to make sure people kind of got the issue. But all right, so I'm looking at a 2 to 10 unit building.
Yeah.
That's going to be my first opportunity.
Yep.
I need to have at least 70% at least up. What's the next stuff that I should be thinking about?
One, in terms of down payment. So if it's 4 units or less, so if it's a 2 to 4 unit, 20% down. You can get away with that, 6 months reserves. If it's 5 or more units, you need to have at least 25% down. Most commercial lenders require 25% down. And it's based off of the property, not necessarily based off the individual. Gotcha. So I think that's a big misunderstanding with residential properties versus commercial is that it's based off the property. So as long as the property is cash flowing, which just basically means that the mortgage or the payment is covered with the leases, then that's a pretty viable property. Gotcha. As long as you have the down payment and the 6 to 12 months reserves. And your credit matters too. So
I need to not only have 25% of whatever the cost is, but I need to have 6 months reserve for the payments for the loan.
That's right. And closing costs. So buying a commercial property is not for someone who's like, I got $5,000, what can I do? Right. And I'll tell you, this is a perfect scenario of someone who is probably buying. Someone who, like when I mentioned we bought our first house and we had all this equity in it, and let's say we buy another house, because we're going to have a new primary, so we're going to put down 3 or 5% or something on that. But the house we just sold, we just cashed in, got $150,000. That person right there is now in the market for their first commercial property.
Gotcha.
Because they've got $150,000, maybe with whatever else. Now they may have $200,000 to work with. Yeah. Now that's a person, because of that house they sold,
that you could really work with.
That's right.
But now let's say I've got this opportunity. I found the property. I don't have 6 months in reserve, but I got the down payment. How should I think about going out and raising the capital that allows me to have the 6 months reserve, the closing cost, and the down payment? Should I be thinking about doing that from friends and family? Should I be thinking about doing that in some other structured way? What do you recommend?
Well, people get lines of credit, home equity lines of credit. Yeah. They bring in partners, just like people will bring in a credit partner. Somebody will bring in somebody that has better credit than them, and they'll say, hey, you're bringing the assets, I'm bringing this. It could be a family member. It could be mom or dad who's retired, and they're like, I got, $300,000 sitting in the bank, just kind of, I'm really ready to do something. It might be, hey, let's do this. It could be, here's another thing too. Sometimes sellers finance. Sometimes sellers will do equity. They'll give you a break, give you closing cost assistance or something like that too. And in commercial, the rules are a little different. So if a seller says, I'll give you $50,000, sometimes that's allowable. Yeah. So it also just negotiation, which is why you need to have a real estate professional that understands commercial and understands how to negotiate a fair deal for you. The reserves, like I said, it could be, You can use a retirement account if you want to.
Yep.
You can bring in a partner. You can get a line of credit if you own another home. People have even gotten business purpose loans and use that as reserves. It's still considered your money. I mean, you're making a payment on it, and your personal debt isn't necessarily factored in. Right. But with a business loan, as long as you're honest and forthcoming with what your purpose is to use it, you could get a business loan for it,
So now I've gotten past all of the aspects that you just described.
Yeah.
Closed on the property. Yeah. I now own the property.
Yeah.
How do they now continue to interact with you as a lender? I mean, I know technically I've already got the money, but what are the smartest people that are in this space doing once they've gotten to the point where they've closed on the property in terms of their relationship with their lenders?
Whether I'm their lender or anybody else, they should keep in touch with them. Let them know how you're doing. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, and ask them questions. The lender usually has a plethora of professionals that they're working with. Yeah. So you say, hey, I maintenance this. I had a gentleman who bought a building and he needed a property manager. I was like, here's somebody right here. I know somebody right here. So I think just, keeping in contact with them, letting them know how you're doing. I like to know how people are doing. I like when people say, hey, remember that building you helped me buy? Well, this is what happened, I think that's it. And then also, when you have that first conversation, though, let them know what your plan is. Most people now, real estate is hot. Everybody wants to get in real estate. Is that now are you on a trajectory to buy the next property?
Yes.
And the next one and the next one. And then how can you leverage this property to do that? So that person, that lender, you should be talking to them before you get the property, during, after, and then bring them other deals. Like, I was looking at this building. Now this one is this situation. What should I do? Yeah. I just recently talked to a gentleman who said that he gets land contracts. Now, land contracts are not all, people kind of, land contract. And I remember talking to an attorney of mine who's very knowledgeable, and she says, why didn't he just do seller financing? At least he's on the deed, and that's why you need an attorney. This gentleman has been buying things with land contracts, which means that he's not on the deed. He has no ownership interest. He gives the owner money, and he's paying the owner every month. Well, I can refinance people out of land contracts, but I can also finance them out of seller-paid financing. So that's another strategy, and that helps folks avoid the down payment.
So explain that for everybody to understand. When you're refinancing seller financing, what does that look like?
Typically, it means that similar to a land contract, except that your ownership is there, and the seller becomes now the lender.
Explain what a land contract is for you.
A land contract is, when people talk about like a rent with option, it's almost like that. So I'm renting the land with the option to buy, and that's considered a land contract. Yeah, but you're kind of renting the property.
And the purpose of the option to buy, so to speak, is that at some point
they're holding it for you.
I'm going to build vertically on that.
Yeah, build on it, or you're going to, maybe it's a property that you're doing a land contract on. A land contract isn't just for land, it also is for real estate. Okay. So you can do a land contract on a piece of real estate. I did have an investor, that's the way he acquired. He owns 4 commercial properties now, and he got them all through land contracts. He basically found sellers. He knew sellers that were, maybe they were tired of the property. They were older, up in age, and they wanted to sell. They were time for them to liquidate. And he said, hey, I'll give you $5,000. I'll take over all the expenses. I'll pay everything. He got it drafted up by his attorney. He made payments every month, paid the owner money every month. And while he was in the land contract, he was fixing up the property. He's fixing up the property, stabilizing the building, got all the units rented, and once he held it for a year, he's ready to refinance, get a traditional loan, and he doesn't need 25% down. Now.
And that's because he already owns the property?
No, that's because he's refinancing. He's not buying it anymore.
I see.
Yeah. But I was talking to an attorney recently about that, and she said a better way to do it is to have seller-paid financing. Then at least he's have ownership, because what if the owner dies in the middle of a land contract? He doesn't own it, and he's been fixing up on a property that he doesn't own. So ideally, you want to do seller-paid financing. The seller, I've actually done these before, and it actually worked out really great. I had a client that purchased a home with seller-paid financing, and I refinanced her out of the property after it was like 16 months.
So let's just walk through for everybody. So bought a home. The seller says, you're going to buy my home. I'm making up numbers for $100. I'm going to finance it. You're going to pay me on this.
Yeah.
And so she paid for 16 months.
Yeah. And then I refinanced her,
And then she said, okay, now I'm going to buy this home from you, but I'm going to refinance you out of
That's exactly how she bought it from him, by doing a refinance, because the cash out and the agreement, you get the seller paid financing based on what you're actually acquiring the property for. So she to give you, this was a real situation. She actually got and the reason why this wasn't working is one, this was a primary home, by the way.
Okay.
She didn't want to get a rehab loan, but the property needed work, and there was no way to finance it without doing a fix and flip, which that wouldn't work because she was going to live there. And she didn't want to do a renovation loan because of all the requirements when you do that, contractor, all this other stuff. And her husband was handy. So she's like, well, how can I get this? The seller heard her issue, said, I'll do seller paid financing. Yeah. So he got his lawyer together. They drafted up an agreement. She was going to buy the house for $140,000. He says, okay. So she paid him $1,500 a month. She had it for 16 months. We checked everything out before she did it. She made the payments on time every single month, had documentation of all the payments, and then we did a refinance after that period, and she became the owner. But now
she paid less than $1,500 a month, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Her payment was probably about $1,300 a month when she actually purchased the property. But guess what? In that 16 months, her husband fixed up the property.
And so the property went from $140,000 in
to
value
$300,000.
Right. So she doubled her value.
And she had the equity position, which means she didn't need a down payment because there was enough. There was more than 25% equity when she finished.
Gotcha. So the key there was that she was able to either hold on to it long enough for it to appreciate or invest in it to appreciate, so that she didn't have to put any additional equity in it because she could use the equity that was accrued in that time period to make
That's
it happen.
right. Yeah.
Right. So that's an interesting way, and it was her primary home.
It was her primary home.
Could she do that if it wasn't her primary home?
Yes.
Yeah.
So 12 to 24 months.
I think there's a whole opportunity to talk about strategies.
Yeah. That was a strategy.
I think for a lot of people, one of the things that scares them is they only can have one view of how to get there.
Yeah.
When in actuality, as you just described, there may be 3 or 4 different components of a view. And then you could take those 3 or 4 different things and fit them together in different ways to get there. You were talking about a rehab loan that might be appropriate in certain instances, or versus whatever else the products might be.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to take a second and tell some stories about people you've worked with, because the story you just told is very powerful, and I think it inspire a lot of people to say, I want to do exactly that.
Yeah.
But there are other people that you've worked with.
Yeah.
Some recently, some probably in the past.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love for you just to tell us a few stories, and I'll probably interject in some questions.
Okay. So let me, I'll try to hit on maybe a self-employed person, someone who did a renovation that was, okay. I'm going to start with somebody that I worked with who had a couple of fix and flips under their belt. So one, they sold for about $700,000, and they put in about $250,000.
Okay.
Another property.
That was all profit for them.
That was all profit for them.
That is not something that the listeners should expect to happen on
right,
their first fix and flip.
No, she had incredible taste. She actually is a nurse, and her first fix and flip, she made about $400,000.
Wow.
It took her 3 years. It was supposed to be a fix flip. Took her 3 years, though.
But you know what?
Permits, delays, all that. But she learned from that.
A lot. And you know what? At the end of 3 years, it still works.
Absolutely.
From a perspective of a return on her investment.
Absolutely.
If she made 3 times her money in less than 3 years, that looks like something like a 40% IRR, internal rate of return. That's an amazing return that any investor would take.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one. Then in another property, she actually inherited that property. She inherited that property, no mortgage on it, and she put about $20,000 in that one. And then there was a third property. She put about $30,000 in that one. Now those 3, the only one that actually counted was the first one. So she didn't actually have enough experience, but I was able to get her 2 exceptions, which was exciting. Yeah. And the other thing is she would bring me different...
Explain the exceptions part.
So the exceptions is because it didn't fit. She's supposed to have 3 viable fix and flips that match the one she wanted to do.
Okay, so when you go to get money to borrow, they ask for at least 3 individual instances that you've done this before.
Yes.
And she didn't have 3.
No.
But she had a couple of exceptions.
She had 1 and 2 that were like, that doesn't really count. The renovation was, $20,000 and $30,000. The property she wanted to acquire now was over a $300,000 renovation.
So this is something that people should be thinking about. If you want to go into this space, you actually have to start actually doing onesie, twosies, threesies
Yeah, exactly.
to get to a place where you become financeable.
That's
so
right.
people need a strategy of how do I get to my first 3?
Yeah.
Right? That actually propels them to the next level.
Yeah, well, honestly, it starts with that first home. You know, because you have low entry point, you only have to put down 3%, 3.5%, or 5%, right? And it might take you 5 or 10 years living in that home. It might.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm big on, slow and steady wins the race, not the quick fixes. And I know everybody here is like, everything sounds so easy. It's not. And then you learn a lot during that time. If you buy your place and, best block, ugly house.
Yeah.
That's the formula. Yeah. And you think about, hey, this house, does, I always say pink toilets and brown carpet. Yeah. Those are the best places.
Built in the 50s.
Built in the 50s. Pink, yeah. That's right. That's right. Great bones. Yeah. Maybe the property was taken care of structurally, but it's just not cosmetically appealing.
Yeah. Those
are the best homes. And they tend to appreciate a lot more because everybody wants the new thing. Yeah. And it's like, no, don't get that. It's a great neighborhood, though. I'm looking for the house that has the, like I said, the pink toilets and all that. And build there. Like, start building equity there by improving the home. And do it yourself. Hire this person or that person to do this project or that project. Put some sweat equity into it and watch your equity grow. Then get a line of credit. And then maybe somebody does. Maybe you inherit a property, or maybe you see this rundown little house, but you've got some skills and you know somebody who's really, really good at fixing things up. Maybe you pick up that house cash, or like with the Cook County Land Bank, or the South Suburban Land Bank. Get a property and let that be your first one, and don't rush it. Let it be your teacher. Yeah. I wouldn't say make the mistakes, but take your time with it. You will
make some mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Take your time with it. Permits may take longer. Your contractor may quit. Stuff is going to happen. But when you finish it, it's going to be amazing. Yeah. And then you sell it. And now that house that you got for, $30,000, now you just sold it for $210,000.
So one of the things that I try to do, I've been working with folks on something called the Breakout Blueprint. And the idea is, let's help you build a plan over a 6 to 18 month period for you to actually be in this industry. And I think one of the mistakes that people make is they focus first on the fix and flips, meaning that they think of themselves as, I'm going to be like, the folks on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
And, we have coming to the conference Egypt Sherrod, who's got fix and flips, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my concern isn't that that's wrong. It's just that in terms of the level of risk that you have to take to be in this industry, if I had to pick one area I would focus on, it's multifamily ownership. I would prefer to focus my effort on multifamily ownership until I'm comfortable enough to be in kind of a commercial or industrial space. That's not to devalue the importance of single family homes. It's just that I'd rather have 4 people or 5 people or 10 people that are paying me rent to know that I can sustain 1 or 2 bad payers than to have only one person that I'm worried about in the process.
You're absolutely right. I agree. So I talk about fix and flips because everybody is that's like popular, right? And it's quick return. Yeah. That's the other thing. But I have another story of a gentleman who he reached out to me and he told me, he says, hey, I'm retiring in 5 years. And he goes, I'm going to get a little pension. He said, but I need to create another income source. He says, I want to buy a commercial property. Now, he was looking at Wisconsin. He was looking at Indiana, and he lives in Chicago. And I asked him, why are you looking? He said, well, I heard, there are good deals there. I said, but do you know that market? Do you know people there? He goes, no. And I said, why don't you work with where you're familiar? I said, because you can go to the property. I'm here, right? I know people, I can help you. Yeah, I was like, maybe you want to kind of stay in your own backyard first before you go to other states. And he goes, so finally, he took my advice and he goes, okay. And he found a 6-unit property. But before that, actually, he was working with a real estate broker who was like a buddy.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, so do they work in commercial real estate? He goes, no, but they were really good friends. And I said, okay, so I'm going to tell you. I said, that's great that you're great friends. I said, but if he doesn't have the expertise that you need, you may not be friends after this.
Yeah.
So
he can't help you the way you think.
He can't help you the way. He's not just showing you a property. He's trying to help it make sense. And so I recommended somebody to him. And he had a conversation with them. Come to find out, he actually knew who this person was, but he didn't know. He just didn't think about them at the time.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I said, no. I said, she's amazing. I said, but she knows the numbers, and she's going to get all the details. She's going to get the operating and expenses. She's going to get all of that for you. She's going to make sure you have all that, and she's going to be able to tell you where the rents are going and all this. And he says, oh, I like to talk to her. So they met, and they went and looked at the 6-unit building. The building was $500,000, and he goes. And he qualified for it. It made sense, the rents that, making sense and all that stuff. Then he went and had an inspection. Always get your inspection. Yeah. He had an inspection, and there were some things wrong with the building. And he was going to walk away from it. She talked to him. The price went from $500,000. He got the building for $350,000, a 6-unit for $350,000.
Yeah.
And he goes, the work was really about $50,000, but she negotiated so tough for him. He bought a 6-unit. It's not falling down. It is completely rented. I talked to him. He is like, I am hooked. Yeah. This building is making him so much money. They were all 2 bedrooms and great neighborhood. And he's like, I need another deal like that. And I said, well, you already know the formula. You got a great real estate broker. You got all the numbers. Yeah. And then I did the numbers for him, kind of going through everything. And I said, and then I was talking to you and you listened. Yeah. And he is loving it. He's like, I think he's making... His mortgage payment, $350,000 on 6-unit, right? Rents are about $15,000.
I imagine if he's borrowing $350,000 and he was able to probably use the equity in that building, he's probably paying what, $3,500
including all expenses. Yeah, he's making about $7,000 a month on that.
So if you got 6 units, each
That's
unit
right.
is making $1,500 a month.
Yeah,
he's basically doubling his money.
That's right. Beautiful situation.
But so this is where.
But it was a year and a half of conversation.
It took a second.
We did a refinance first of his home. He put money in the bank. He threw all the so that was his 6 to 18-month plan.
Well, this is where I'm going with this because I think for a lot of people they need to start obviously with a long-term vision of where they're trying to go.
Yep.
Their goal is to own multiple multifamily business, family homes, properties, apartment buildings, right? Mm-hmm. Before I get there, I probably need to do 1 or 2 fix and flips because I need 2 or 3 of these fix and flips on my record to show people that I can be a good
risk.
Good risk. Yeah. Before I do that, I've got to fix my credit.
Yeah.
I got to make sure my credit is in the right place.
Yeah.
And before I do that, I need to think through what my fears versus my danger really is. Yeah. And I need to think about calculated versus, reckless risk. Yeah. And all of that needs to be happening at the same time that I'm making relationships because I need a deal team. Yeah. I need to have, and my deal team includes obviously my lender, advanced lending. Right. I need a lawyer. I need other people. I need to understand the market.
That's right.
How do I learn the marketplace? So that I understand where
go
there's
to things like the Achieve Summit.
Go like to the Achieve Summit.
And talk to people, ask questions. Yeah. Prepare 3 questions.
Yeah.
When you go to the Achieve Summit, when people go to the Achieve Summit, they should have 3 questions. What brought you here? Yeah. Somebody's going to say, well, I'm an investor. Once they say they're an investor, what kind of investing? Well, I buy commercial. Yeah. You've just made a connection. This person is doing what you want to do. Yeah. This is somebody you need to keep in touch with.
Absolutely.
Would you mind sharing with me your big pros and cons of owning commercial real estate? Right. What are the differences between owning commercial real estate and residential real estate? Yeah. What costs? What are the water bills? Would you buy a building that has separate utilities, or do you recommend maybe one with a boiler so heat's included, or those types of things? What kind of maintenance is acceptable? Yeah. Should I buy some like the gentleman who I mentioned who
bought the 6-unit?
Yeah, who bought the 6-unit. It scared him to death. And the real estate agent said, well, this is an older building. Explain some things to him. And he goes, and then when he talked to the home inspector again, he goes, well, no, this is probably, you have to do this in 5 years. Every building is going to need work. Anyway. So it calmed him down. He understood because he had a deal team. Yeah. And that home inspector should be a part of it too.
Well, the deal team is important, but I think there's something else that's important that I advocate for, and I'm curious kind of how you think about, which is I think in many cases people should think about being in the private lending business, right? Meaning that I'm going to start lending to others who are buying those multifamily units. The equity that they need. I'm going to be I'm a debt lender. For the equity.
That's another way.
Part of it is I get to see more deals. Yeah. I'm not involved in the deal. I'm not taking that risk.
Right.
I'm using
a little return for your investment.
It's a little return, and I'm using the property as collateral. My worst case scenario is I'm stuck with a property that I was interested in investing in the first place.
Right.
I'm just doing it kind of on the back end.
That's not a bad idea, but I also think there's a risk there because people don't trust. So I do know several companies that do that, and people who have done that. I think that's another way.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to invest in real estate. Yeah. It's really where the risk. If they're like, look, I got $10,000, then maybe you want to do that because you got $10,000. You're not going to go bankrupt if the worst thing that happens is you're part owner of this property, right? And you're getting your return, and it's just slow and steady, right? So maybe that is a way to start out investing. Yeah. Maybe let's say you've got $25,000. You're like, well, if I get $25,000, what do I want to do with this? So maybe you think, I'm going to buy a home and I'm going to fix it up myself. I'm going to buy a condo or something that I'm going to live in, and I'm going to fix it up myself. If you've got $50,000, I think based on the amount of money you have changes how you start investing. Yeah. If you're like, I just sold a house and I put $150,000, $200,000 in the bank, well, now maybe you're looking at commercial. Or now maybe you're looking at a small strip mall with partners, or by yourself. Or, I think people don't spend a lot of time thinking about where they want to go. They just want the here and now. Yeah. That leads me to another story. I have a gentleman that I've been working with who he's never purchased a primary. He inherited a property, and he is incredibly excited about investing in real estate. So 1 week he wants to do fix and flips. The next week he wants to buy commercial. The next week he wants to do ground up construction. Yeah. And that's the problem.
Yeah. You can't be a dabbler.
Yeah.
You have to develop some sort of, it's not that you can't do more than one thing, but you can't dabble in all of them.
Yeah. And he's in and I just told him, and I said, if you don't mind me saying this, I said, you got to pick one. I said, you got to start somewhere, but you've got to narrow it down because you're all over the place and you got a lot of people in your ear. I said, what are you comfortable with? And he goes, well, I really want to do commercial now. I said, why? Well, because you make more money. I said, no. I said, you got to think about the weeds of it. What do you like about commercial? Well, you make more money. I said, then that's probably not where you want to start. I said, have you ever bought your own home before? He had never purchased his own home. Right. I said, then let that be your first investment. I said, you can live there and you can fix it up, build equity in it, and then sell it. He was not a person who's attached to real estate at all. And he had this other property that he also inherited. And I said, well, what are you going to do with that property? He was going to get a rehab loan for about $400,000. And I said, well, if you get that, that's all you're going to be able to do. But if you sell it, now you've got, maybe $200,000, and the world is your oyster, right? You can do something.
For the listeners, the rehab loan requires you to own the property for a certain period of time, right?
No, you can actually go into a property doing a renovation loan, a rehab loan up front. So there's like FHA 203K is one. There's also conventional renovation loans. Okay. So say somebody sees a house, they want to fix it up. It also depends on how your contract is negotiated. Like if the seller's willing to give you the time. It might take you 45 to 60 days to close on a renovation loan going in to a primary. Or you buy it and you can do a refinance renovation. Gotcha. The biggest difference, though, is if you do a refinance renovation, your loan to value is going to be like you're going to have more equity in it. Yeah. Like a 75% loan to value is going to be the ARV. So ideally, you want to do it going in because then you can get away with the 5% down with a conventional renovation of 3.5%.
Well, I can continue.
I know I just said a lot. You're like, okay.
No, this conversation is fascinating. And actually, I have an idea that we'll talk a little bit more about offline because I think that the permutations that you are describing of how people get to a place where they've got both the confidence, the knowledge, and the experience that allow them to buy real estate is really interesting. Last question I want to ask is kind of an open one, but we're going to a period of tremendous uncertainty. Yeah. And I'm always of the belief that with uncertainty comes an opportunity to make money, but you really have to be even more conscientious about a reckless versus a calculated risk. Yeah. Given what, whatever your thought process of what's going to happen in the next year, 18 months, 2 years, how would you approach this market from a real estate perspective?
I would definitely take calculated risks. I think this is a great time to make money in real estate, to be perfectly frank. Yeah. I always say stack your chips. Yeah. Save your money. Don't go buy the frivolous thing. We were just talking about chicken coops
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and farming,
before we have all
yeah,
that.
I do. I think people need to be very aggressive about saving. I think no reckless spending. Save your money. There are going to be opportunities. And when they come, you're going to want to be able to move forward. Yeah. So I do think people need to invest. I don't think people should get caught up in the interest rates. You can always refinance the interest rate. It's about the cash flow. There are people right now that are on the home buyer side that are buying homes with 6%, 7% interest rates, and they're still buying it. It's still less than rent. And there are people that are purchasing investment property that are getting, 7, 8, 9, even 10% interest rates, and they're still making money. So if you can make money and the interest rates are high,
well, when they go down, you make more.
That's right.
I will say this, and this is to age myself a little bit. I can remember when interest rates were in the teens.
Oh,
right?
wow. But the houses were.
No, the interest rates for the houses were in the teens. Oh, yeah, they were $30,000.
Right, exactly, right.
To buy a house. But, I think people confuse that. Like we've gone through this cycle before, right? The 70s and the OPEC oil crisis, which unfortunately I was old enough to remember. The 80s with the S&L crisis, which again I was unfortunately old enough to remember. This is a repeatable cycle that's happened that you can see.
Yeah.
And in each of those instances, people who bought homes at that time ended up making a tremendous amount of money.
That's right. Now I always say, they always think because I'm in the industry, I say now's the time to buy, but now is the time to buy. Yeah. It is time. I believe it is time to buy. It is time to invest. Because one, you're going to have less competition because the people that are afraid who haven't quite gotten over that, they're not doing anything.
Yeah, fear will paralyze a lot of people in this environment.
Yeah, and I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Fear will also open up a lot of opportunities to
That's
make
right.
purchases and for deals that wouldn't exist elsewhere.
That's right. This is a deal market.
Yeah.
This is a deal market. This is a open up your mouth, open up your savings account. It's time to invest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the people that invest now are going to be our next flood of millionaires.
Well, listen, I want to thank you very, very much. This
Thank you
has
so
been a
much.
thrilling conversation. We're excited to have you at the conference coming up.
Yes,
in a little
I'm
bit.
excited to be there.
And we're actually excited to have you back on the show. I think you'd be great to come back on another time. So we'll
I would
talk
love
more
to.
about that. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so
All right.
much.